Egyptian Tour Video by Jevyn Glick. Egypt. Located along the Nile River in northeastern Africa, Egypt is one of humanity's longest-lasting civilizations. The Egyptians thought that Egypt had two different types of land, the Red Land and the Black Land. The Red Land was dry, uninhabitable desert, while the Black Land consisted of the fertile banks of the Nile. The Red Land served as a barrier between the ancient Egyptians and the rest of the world. It also gave the Egyptians access to precious metals and semi-precious stones. The desert separated Egypt from invading armies in nearby countries. The Black Land was used for growing crops because of its rich soil. Egyptians developed systems of irrigation. Irrigation was crucial to Egyptian society. It allowed Egyptians to have greater control over their agricultural methods. With irrigation, farmers could grow crops such as wheat, barley, figs, pomegranates, melons, corn, vines, and flax. There were two main farming seasons. These seasons were Peret, the growing season, and Shamu, the harvesting season. There was also a third season, Akhet, the flooding season. During this time, no farming was done. Instead, the Nile River flooded, making the soil more fertile. Many farmers worked for the pharaoh building pyramids or temples during this time. Ancient Egyptians also had many types of weapons. Early on, Egyptians used weapons like clubs, slings, throwing sticks, stone maces, and stone-tipped spears. Later, Egyptians started using bronze and obsidian for weapons. Simple bows were also created and used as stone arrows. Longbows and composite bows were used throughout Egyptian history. Arrowheads were changed from stone to obsidian to bronze, eventually to iron. Archers gave ranged attacks to chariots and eventually became dominant in ancient battlefields. Egyptians also had a pitiful weapon called a throwing stick. It was a glorified stick that had no killing potential whatsoever. Foot soldiers often carried the throwing stick as a secondary weapon. The item with actual killing power, though, was the khopesh. A khopesh features a curved, thick blade and measures about 2 feet long. Khopesh was a thick, crescent-shaped blade that is used for slashing. Another uniquely Egyptian weapon was a type of battle axe. They were created from bronze and had crescent-shaped blades. The axe was used only for a brief period of time, to only take down unarmored foes with hide shields. Egyptians did have strong, simple weapons though. This weapon was a spear. Spears are simple to make and easy to master. Egyptians were masters of trade. Egyptians traded with Africans, Afghans, Punts, Nubians, and Lebanese. They traded many things with their partners. Things like cedar, ebony, ivory, lapis lazuli, incense, oils, gold, and even traded copper and iron with their best allies. Egyptians and their trading partners often sailed through the Nile River to trade goods. Egyptians had many modes of transportation. The Nile was often used as a means of travel. Many vessels were made for it, such as ferries, rafts, boats, and ships. Travel by land was done by donkeys, sledges, carts, chariots, litters, and of course, walking. Egyptian roads existed, but most have not stood the test of time. Most roads were made of dirt. Occasionally, some were paved, but that was rare. Only rarely were they the result of construction work. Generally, they came into being as people used certain trajectories time and again to get from one place to another. Where they existed for an extended time and were well used, the ground became compacted and began to differ significantly from the terrain on either side. In the floodplain, some roads were on top of the dikes. This is not to say that Egyptians did not construct things. The Egyptians built the pyramids. The pyramids honored deceased pharaohs and shows how important the pharaoh was in Egyptian society. Another important thing in Egyptian society was the Book of the Dead. The Book of the Dead was an essential piece of literature. The book details a number of magic spells that are needed so the user has a safe journey through the underworld. The Book of the Dead was written in hieroglyphics, like many other ancient Egyptian scripts and records, such as Egyptian laws. Egyptian law is an odd thing. We believe that Egyptian law was based on a common sense view of right and wrong, following the codes based on the concept of Maat. Maat represents truth, order, balance, and justice in the universe. This concept allowed that everyone, with the exception of slaves, should be viewed as equals under the law, regardless of wealth or social position. Despite this, slaves are still unequal, and oftentimes, if a relative committed a crime, the entire family was punished.